everyone. We're riding the cloud native wave. Stay tuned. You're watching Tech Strong Gang. Hey everyone, happy Monday. Welcome back after what I hope is a great summer weekend for you. It's time to shake out those Saturdays and Sundays though, because it's Monday. It's Monday morning and we've got our Monday gang crew here to go over stuff with you. Let me introduce you to them quickly. The people of all regular gang members here. So we've got our Tracy Ragan, Jack Polar, Dr. Stacey Thayer, Mitch Ashley, and of course the Dean Mike Vizard. Mike, hope you had a good weekend.
I did.
These Yankees are heartbreakers.
All right. I'm making a little tour of New York State starting tomorrow. So
good for you. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. All righty. Hey, gang, we're going to start off with a look at a mid-year look, let's call it, at the CNCF open source 200 some odd products in there. Projects, not products, excuse me, they're projects, they're open source. But there's 200 of them. They highlighted some of the movers and shakers. Mike, what do we got?
Yeah, if you look at the report that they published, it wouldn't come as much as a surprise that there's a lot of usage and adoption of Kubernetes. It's kind of always been the lead poster child, but there's also a lot of uptake on open telemetry, which in my mind is bigger than cloud native itself. It goes well beyond that. And then there's all these other projects, some of which are now starting to maybe get enough traction on their own. Things like Argo are starting to see a lot more usage and adoption. But Tracy, you live in this space. Is there anything in this report that kind of leapt out at you?
Well, first of all, it's near and dear to my heart. The CNCF has been an amazing open source foundation. It really has. The growth that it's experienced over the last, 5 years is incredible. I think Backstage kind of leaped out at me. And Backstage probably is a reflection of platform engineering. But, when you look at what Backstage is, it's another kind of tool that we're doing plugins around. And I believe that will get disrupted with new ways of doing things. And maybe Backstage will be the ones to disrupt it. But when I look at a report like this, and Backstage is unique because I think the company it started, it was Rody, and they're kind of like us. They're small, they've pushed it, and they've done an amazing job of building a platform for platform engineers. But what it makes me think about truly is when you look at those numbers, you have to really see what's inside those numbers in terms of contributors, particularly like Kubernetes, because it's the giants that are contributing. We don't see, when you look at that, you go, there's thousands of, hardworking, volunteering contributors, but many of those contributors are paid by Microsoft, by Apple to do those open source projects. And that's really what's driving some of these projects. Now, if you look at the broad scope, even Argo and some of the smaller projects that we're seeing in those 200, if you ever take a look at the CNCF landscape, it'll make you dizzy. But the smaller projects are truly being driven by small companies who are trying to leverage and make a business out of the CNCF. But in reality, the contributors are coming from the big companies. So Kubernetes is an important, very important project for every single company that is trying to do digital transformation. And it doesn't surprise me that it's on the top of the list. So I think that we have to look at and be realistic about who those contributors are and, give every contributor a pat on the back who's in one of those smaller projects that are not getting noticed, who are doing this because they love open source and they want to provide tooling that their community can benefit from. But we're going to see a lot more. And there is a danger to what's happening at the CNCF. I can see it being too big. The weight of itself is too much to carry. And the problem has become is that every project wants to be part of the CNCF. The CDF even is losing projects to the CNCF because that's where Kubernetes is. That's where the money is. That's where the attention is. And so I it gets diluted, right? It gets a little bit diluted. Those 200 projects, I don't believe all of them should be there. In fact, I would argue that Argo should be in the CD Foundation. And there are security tools that should be in the Open SSF. So it's a little bit of, I would call it a bloated look at the projects. And if you really look at the contributors, there's a lot of big companies who pay contributors to do the work.
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, for anyone who looks at the article, there's this bubble chart of all the different projects. I should mention that's not just CNCF projects. That's actually all the Linux Foundation projects. And the list of the movers and shakers is not just CNCF as well. There are also Linux ones on there. But that being said, when we look at just the CNCF, Tracy, I agree with you. 200 plus and growing projects is a lot. I've spoken to the CNCF people about this. And, they feel they'll just keep taking projects as long as, because that's their charter. And it sort of becomes the child who eats the parent almost, right? Or it's that one big bird in the nest that's taking all the food and all the other little baby birds aren't as big and they're not as healthy. And that's not healthy for the whole ecosystem at some level. And I don't disagree there. The other thing I would mention, though, is this is momentum, not just who has the most developers, but who's adding the most developers, who's adding the most other key metrics. And when you look under the covers a little bit, yes, Kubernetes still rules the roost, but OpenTelemetry may have, in fact, more velocity than Kube, which is...
They probably have, I would guess they have more end users. It definitely has, the end users who are usually actually implementing. Yes.
The velocity is there. I, too, was happy to see Backstage on there. There's another article on our platformengineering.com site I wrote about Backstage specifically. So Backstage was Spotify, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Right.
And
Backstage is Spotify.
And then they contributed, they gave it to the CNCF in 2022. So in just 3 years, it's shot up into the top 30 there, and it's rising with a bullet. But at the same time, as I think you'll see in my article on platform engineering, Spotify's now come out with a hosted version of Backstage, a SaaS version that they charge for. And there are some other internal developer platform competitors out there, because, the story with Backstage is the same thing that not plagues, but it's the same story we hear with a lot of open source stuff. It's hard to use, it's command line, it's not as polished, it's not that commercial version. And if that's the kind of person, go use the SaaS version. But anyway, Argo and Flux, the two GitOps players, absolutely are hitting strides. Look, overall, it's a very healthy market at the top, but I'd like to see the bottom 50 of the 200 and see what kind of numbers they have, because those people may in fact be better served finding someone who can show them a little more love, a little more time.
Yeah, it's hard as an open source, running an open source project within the Linux Foundation. When you're one of those small ones, it's hard to find the love. You really have to make you have to make a lot of noise.
Mitch, I have a conspiracy theory. My conspiracy theory.
Monday morning conspiracy theory. All right.
It was Epstein, wasn't it?
And it goes to me, right? The project teams, because they're funded by vendors, are not exactly all that interested in making everything easier, because their vendors are creating the commercial version to make things easy. And there's not enough time and effort in being put into making things easy, because it's just not in anybody's economic interest.
Hold it. You mean there's gambling going on here? There's financial interest happening? Oh my gosh. my heart's broken for open source. I mean, it's real. I mean, companies are contributing because that's in their financial interest. It isn't pure altruism. Maybe it's not even altruism at all, right? They may not actually be major open source advocates as much as it's important to their business. And if it wasn't for that, maybe they wouldn't be. I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, but it's you have to also look at the other side of it. It's that also drives a lot of the innovation and moving projects forward, whether they're new ones that are contributed, like we talked about Backstage, where it's accelerated 2 and 3 years, or Kubernetes and Kubeflow and Open Telemetry, I think, is the kind of poster child for involving a lot of people, a lot of vendors out of an ecosystem to work together. So much so that both Kubernetes and I think Open Telemetry too has kind of passed the cloud native moniker, at least in terms of their use. Alan, you and I were talking about this the other day. Is Kubernetes really a cloud native thing anymore? It's really a workflow engine, workflow system that works on anything, AI applications, or what it doesn't matter what it is, anything that's containerized, and it could be a cloud native app, quote unquote. So on the plus side, I'm super happy that we've got a great ecosystem of open source, and with what the CNCF is doing, I don't have an appreciation like you do, Tracy, of what it is to be one of the small teams and projects, and I'm sure that's a struggle. Maybe that's something the CNCF could take on, is how do we identify projects that have a lot of promise but need a little bit of help, need that sort of that startup nudge, get them to the next tier to help them accomplish that, and maybe find a sponsor or two.
And there may be projects like Open Telemetry that are bigger than cloud native, and maybe it's time for them to move on and become their own little foundation. I don't know. I'm just putting it out.
Kind of think so.
The project I thought we would see in that list was Open Tofu.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's had enough runway to really, because that's a hard list to crack, right?
Oh, yeah.
You got to.
Yes.
And so I'd say if it's not on by next year, or maybe by the end of this year, because this was just a mid-year look, let's see, end of year look, then I'd say, okay, maybe there was a lot of smoke and not as much fire there.
That's a good one, Tracy. I agree with you.
They're not abandoning the Hashi stuff. Anyway, though, it's a colossus, right? This CNCF and the whole open source world around it. I was just interviewing the CEO of Root.io, and they're doing agentic remediation on the fly of a lot of these open source tools and components that we're seeing in there, even the OSs. And they donated a project to the CNCF too, Slim or something.
How about we see an AI agent for all these projects, and that'll make it easier because that one AI agent can figure out how to learn all these things, right? Or do I need 100 AI agents because there's 100 projects? I don't know.
Maybe
can
they're
be the
just
maintainers.
sub-agents. I want to be your secret agent, man, right? Let's get that song going.
I always knew out of it's going to be like Downton Abbey. There's going to be a head butler agent, and then there's going to be all these other agents working downstairs taking care of stuff.
But I think about that. Are they other agents, or are they just alter egos, sub-agents, if you will, of that master agent?
Well, it's funny you say that, Mike, because Walmart just announced that they're actually doing exactly that. They discovered they had way too many agents, and so they're now consolidating and having one agent, one master agent for consumers, another master agent for their vendor suppliers, another master agent for the developers, which will then farm out work to all of the sub-agents that you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying we're having layoff of agents. Wow. That's
and
a
this
first.
goes to that there's that amazing discussion that we should still be having around how to lay these agents out. And a domain structure will be so critical. And it's not always about LLMs, right? It's got, we have to start making a more container, or I shouldn't say use the word container, but more specialized and more domain specific.
I'm with you.
And we should have that conversation on one of these calls.
We should.
I know someone. I can make that happen. We'll put it out there.
I will pencil that in for a week from today.
All righty. All right, guys. Hey, we're going to take a break here on Tech Strong Bang Gang, and let's come back and talk a little digital transformation, modernization, I don't know what you call it. You're watching TechStrong, gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back and we're talking about digital transformation, and a funny thing happened on the way to innovation. I think we discovered that there was just a lot of stuff that we were working with that was suboptimal and just wasn't working the way it was supposed to in the first place. And a lot of these digital transformation initiatives shifted from being about some great new innovation thing to simple, good old-fashioned modernization. Alan, you wrote 2 stories related to this topic on Digital CXO. We invite you all to check those things out. But what's your take on what's happening here?
You know, I've always felt that digital transformation was a loaded word, right? It meant something different to different people. To some people, digital transformation meant transforming from an analog world to a digital world, right? They went from a brick and mortar store maybe to actually being able to sell stuff electronically online. COVID was a huge catalyst for that, right? People didn't come to your store shopping. You had to get it. You had to get your goods to them and be able to sell it to them online. Then, for others, digital transformation became code word for moving to the cloud, which to me was really a modernization play. But for many people, digital transformation was, I'm going to take advantage of the latest digital. I'm already digital to a certain degree, but I'm going to take advantage of the latest digital platforms. For others, it's a much broader term, emphasis on transformation, not on digital. And that's the second article I wrote, The Rise of the CTRO, the Chief Transformation Officer. Their charter is to transform the company or their organization into a modern organization. And it's not maybe just IT even, frankly. It's the people, process, technologies. It's a modern, transforming to take advantage of modern formulas and so forth. So while we all are, and I cited in the first article, there's companies that put out, here's the stats on digital transformation. It's a gazillion trillion dollar industry, and there's all of this and all of that and all these big numbers, highfalutin numbers that make you say, oh my God, digital transformation is rocking and rolling. It's the major force in the industry. But when you peel back those numbers, what you really see is a lot of the money is being spent, Mike, as you said, on good old-fashioned modernization. We're modernizing. We're modernizing from waterfall to microservices, cloud and cloud native from data center, right? Containerization. We're using AI and machine learning and we're moving from APM to observability, right? All of these, not little, but all these disparate things that we do that make for the modern enterprise, that make for the modern IT stack. And we could still call that digital transformation. I do believe that still is digital transformation. But I think we've got to be smarter about what we think of when we talk digital transformation.
Alan, if I had to play historian for a moment, I remember the first time I really kind of heard about it. I don't know if it's the OG of digital transformation, but if you remember Tom Siebel Systems, CRM, the early CRM player, he wrote a book on it. And he described there were 4 things. It was moving to the this is how he defined it in his book. This is pre-COVID. So it was moving to the cloud, it was automation, it was data, and it was AI. And so that was kind of my OG definition of what digital transformation is. And I think as COVID hit and we needed everything to go digital, then the digital become what the transformation was about, is to getting things into a digital format because we can't do manual processes with everybody working from home. And then that started to expand, as you mentioned. We saw a lot more going to the cloud. One of the characteristics of my time of working in large enterprises is what happens is, as soon as projects start getting of a certain type start getting funded, suddenly your project is now one of those kinds of projects, because that's how you get funding for it. So our whatever it was, Mitch's favorite project is now a digital transformation project. Let's go get those funds. So it just broadens the definition, and that's kind of where we are. It's a little bit of everything. It's a rainbow of different kinds of projects, and it really is some modernization, some going digital, some going AI. I think it's a move forward, taking your technology and moving it forward in some way.
Mitch, to some extent, yes, and to some extent, no. That's not a new concept. Going way before Siebel's book was back in the mid-90s, was a book called Reengineering the Corporation, which was all about how we transform the corporation, if you remember that, right?
I remember reengineering projects. Yes, I do.
Right, reengineering projects. And it was really about arguing against incremental improvements and going for quantum leap type improvements. And in one sense, a digital transformation, digitizing your analog processes, really is that quantum leap forward, or quantum leap different. And they argued for, which I think now, 30 years later, we're seeing the formalization of a leader, in this case, the Chief Transformation Officer, CTRO, because you need somebody senior enough in the organization who has the authority and the sway to actually evoke change, that these are not things in a large corporation that can be done from the bottom or from the middle. They have to have a mandate from the top. Now, once you have that mandate and you start doing those projects, yes, everybody wants to glom on because that's where the money is. But I do think that there's a very valid purpose in having a chief transformation officer who has the mandate to change the organization, how it does business, which really means changing the culture of the business as well. To me, it's much more than just the digital workflow.
The mandate, though, is complicated because it kind of goes like this. Digital transformation officer launches new project, builds new app, and then needs data to actually feed this thing. And then they got to call up the CIO, and they call up the CIO, and they go, I need access to this data, and I need these legacy systems of yours need to have APIs, which is usually followed by a comment from the CIO that's roughly equivalent to what you're talking about, Willis. And then it just sits.
And that has gone on for how many years, right?
Since the beginning of
was
time.
it digital transformation when we went from a green screen to a screen scraper? Remember that phase?
Mhm.
We've gone through. We are never still. We do not float in still water. This
No.
industry
Mhm.
is on a kayak at the Colorado River at its most, highest point. We are constantly changing. There is never a point in time that we're not transforming. And how long will it be before AI is not the shiny new tool? It's all quantum. I'm already getting there. And every new term that comes out, I feel like it's just a way to market to investors. Right? It's all about getting funding, and these small companies coming up. And now, if you don't have AI in your portfolio, then you're not being looked at. How long will it be before it says you've got to have quantum? This is just who we are as a community. We always have been in a constant flux of change. And, I don't know why we now have a digital transformation officer. I think it's kind of a cool term. I want to be one. It looks like a really fun job. But, they're going to, what are they going to transform? Are they going to ever stop? So I think we just have to see it for what it is, that we're an industry that can't stop. We have to constantly evolve. There is no other.
We're like sharks. We're like sharks. If you're not swimming forward, they drown.
Yeah. If you're not swimming forward, you would drown. Yeah.
I think evolve is really the word that kept coming to my mind, was that we have to evolve. It's almost Darwinian, right? If you don't keep evolving, if we don't keep moving into technologies, some companies or people become extinct in their careers or in their trajectory. So that's what I think transformation. But chief evolution officer, well, we'll see if that comes up. But at least it's good.
There are people who don't believe in evolution still. Don't forget.
Well, I know.
At least in the U.S. anyway.
But one more thing: the more things change, the more things stay the same. We still have
so true.
programmers. We still have to scan code. We still have to run and build. We still have to figure out how to deploy things. We still have to figure out the dependencies across all of these components. They're just parts. Parts are parts. And in that aspect, we haven't changed any.
But
You're giving me
the role of the transformation officer is to eat the sacred cows, basically, right? They make the tastiest hamburgers, to borrow another book's title, right? The problem in many organizations is people are resistant to change because we've always done it this way. It works. And yes, it works, but can it be better? And can we do more, quicker, better, faster, more if we change? And in organizations, there are two opposing forces. And if you don't have something opposing the force that wants to stay static, you will stay static.
That kind of reminds me of the Goal and Phoenix Project and all that stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Change
But I wish we were a little more deliberate about it, because when you go visit a lot of these enterprises, you discover that there's just stacks and stacks of crap and projects that people built, and they're all kind of isolated, and nobody actually, integrated much of this with any kind of real plan, and it's different business leaders funded and all this other stuff, and it's just kind of a mess.
It's interesting how it evolves, because some things do fall by the wayside. Like you were talking about, AI might not be the shiny object anymore. I'm having a little bit of PTSD from the re-engineering era of the 90s, Jack. Thank you very much. For me, that was all about moving to client server, using X workstations instead of terminals, on service reps' desks and things like that, which is about bringing graphical user interface, putting the Unix boxes on people's desks. Well, that kind of went by the wayside as we replaced that with computers and Windows devices. But it was part of the evolution. It was part of the way that, yes, the client server stuff stayed, and then we evolved that to where we are today. But it's part. I like your river analogy, Tracy, because it's a constant motion thing, and you trying to paddle against the tide or against the river. Good luck, right? Especially if you're at the peak of it. So sometimes it carries you if you're not be careful.
Yeah. For sure. All right, let's take a break here on TechStrong Gang. We're going to come back into our C block, Busy Bee Body. Ooh, it sounds good. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey folks, we're back, and Amazon is acquiring a little startup called BAI. They make this kind of bracelet thing that auto transcribes conversations and summaries, and might even occasionally raise the privacy alarm. We'll see about who's listening in on this stuff. But Stacey, I would love to get your impression on this, because in my mind, the minute I read this, I was like, so let me get this straight. I got to check to see everybody's wearing a bracelet before I open my mouth to see what the heck I might say or not say.
Mm-hmm. Well, this new wave of wearables, I mean, everything from the meta glasses, recording things, to, if there's something on your wrist, what are people wearing and what are the privacy implications of that? Are people sharing if they're wearing something that can be recording for you? Is it one of those, like when you go to an event and they say recording is in process, where people have to, make it known what will happen with this is and then the question comes, why are they wearing it? What's the purpose for it? My memory is bad. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if I want to report the conversation.
So I had the same thoughts, Stacey. So first of all, look, we all think Amazon's listening in on us through Alexa anyway, right? And so what's different about this? But there's two things here. And they're on both sides, one's on one side, one's on the other side of this. The first thing is there are definitely laws, whether it's on a phone conversation or meeting, right? I mean, we're not talking about policemen or law enforcement.
Two-party or one-party is what they're
Right,
usually
that
called.
you've got to be notified that what you're saying is being recorded, right? And I don't know how that applies in this situation and if it would ever be admissible or usable or whatever. But I will tell you, God, but my brother-in-law is much older than my wife and I. God bless him. He's 81 years old, and he's walked around as long as I know him, which is a long time, with like one of those little recorders. And you'll say something to him. He'll say, "Wait a second, say it again," and then he'll make a mental note on his recorder with it. My brother-in-law, Phil Mitchell, you've met him, I believe. Mike, you probably have too. He always makes his little notes because then he goes home and he actually takes notes off of what his recorder says, and he has recordings going back years. So I think in that regard, for seniors, for people with memory, or just people who like to take notes, it's a great thing. It's a great thing. And if you don't mind the privacy, it is a great thing. But will everyone else think it's such a great thing? And that's really
there's also the unintended consequences of it, right? Like, do all of us want cameras in our car to record everything we're doing and how fast we're driving? And so the insurance company, so the insurance company can up our rates. Do we want to be wearing body cams someday? Everybody's wearing a body cam, and it's in their glasses or it's in their jewelry or whatever. I mean, that's where we're headed. And that there are the benefits side of it, but there's also the consequences, which is, okay, that can be used in a court of law when something happens. You remember it this way, but your body cam remembers it differently. So putting it in digital form can be a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Oh, that's I think what I was trying to say. There's two sides to this.
So I think there's two things that I want to talk about. First, I want to make a disclaimer that I actually use the Plod pen, right?
Oh, you've been recording us all this time, Jack?
Yeah, well,
I'm hurt.
Well, so it just clips on here, right? The difference is this is not an always-on device. You have to turn it on when you want to record. Now, I find it very useful for in meetings, or particularly when I do briefings at a conference. It's very useful because then I can be in the moment and have a discussion, knowing that it's recording it, so I have notes afterwards, rather than sitting there having to write stuff down. But it's not an always-on device, so it's not recording everything all the time. I think more importantly for this is Amazon's acquisition and what that means, because Amazon has a very mixed record with privacy, right? So you have the Alexa device.
Well, hold on, Jack. Let's not mince words. It's not a mixed record. It's a very tarnished record.
I'm trying to walk a fine line.
I got you.
Amazon bought Ring, which is effectively an always-on camera for your home. And once they bought it, people discovered a lot of privacy implications, including that Amazon basically gave access to your local police department to your cameras so that they could use it. Now, people were less upset about the cameras they had pointing outwards than they had of the cameras pointing into their homes. And why would police want to get access to any of that? So there's a lot of privacy implications just with Amazon acquiring the technology outside of the technology itself, because of Amazon's very mixed reputation.
Yeah, no, I do think that because it's Amazon, people are going to look a little bit more closely at it just because what's Bezos going to do with that information already? What do we think he does now? The other thing, though, I'll mention, there's a difference between video and Jack voice recorder, which is in essence what this is. Though this is a voice recorder, the transcription service, is the transcription service really good? Right? 90% means 1 out of every 10 words is still wrong.
I can't speak to B. I can speak to Plod to say, and to say Zoom, which will record your Zoom calls, right? They're actually very good with most modern English. Now, I can't speak to any other language. They often get names wrong because names can be very difficult. But for my purposes, the recording, the transcription, the AI analysis has been very helpful. I am concerned from a privacy, both from an enterprise data privacy, data security point of view, and from just a personal privacy security perspective of who has access to the data and what do they do with it. Now, B claims that they instantly transcribe, so they don't actually record the audio. They listen and transcribe. They don't save the audio itself. They save the transcription and their analysis of it, and they move that to the cloud. Claude actually records the audio, sends the audio to the cloud or to an app on your phone, and does the transcription afterwards. So again, it's who has access to it and what are they going to do with that data. And then from an always on nature, if I'm at a place where it's not expected that you're being recorded, like at a conference, everybody knows everything's being recorded, so I don't worry about it. But if I'm having a conversation one-on-one with somebody, I ask them, can I record this?
I think that's the decent thing to do.
Right.
I just think it's just weird. To me, it's just weird. I don't know why I would want to record every conversation I had. I can see wanting to record some conversations, like, if I'm doing research and I want to interview somebody, and I usually try to do Zoom so I can get the transcription. But just to have it on all the time is odd. To me, I don't understand the use case at all. It just...
Reality TV stars?
Well, do you remember the episode of Black Mirror where they can see everything and then rewind it? It was like in the air. And I think that was around the time I stopped watching. The idea of that was just like, oh God, the trouble that what is the reality and the truth? And when I look at this and I think, okay, so like when I give talks at conferences, they're very human centric. And so burnout and things, whatnot, we wouldn't sometimes allow recordings in there because it's of human nature. And so the idea that anybody could be recording you at any time, conversations, like what's the noise, how much sound does it pick up around you? What's the ambient noise factor? I have a lot of questions. Can you go to Europe with this, for example? It's just, to me, it seems like such a rabbit hole of what can you do with this?
Let me propose something to you all here. Howdy, boomer or Xer. Is this a generational thing? Will my children really give a hoot if everything's recorded? The 20-something, Gen Zs and whatever comes after Gen Zs, right?
I hope so.
Are you asking them to clean their rooms? Because then no.
No, I mean...
Spoken like a mom. But yeah, I get it.
I think if they record everything that happens after they leave a bar at 2 a.m., I think they'll care.
Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of authoritarian, actually. I mean, if you look at China, China records everything everywhere. It's very authoritarian.
Well, there's a lot of video in London too, though.
London has more cameras than any other city in the West. And by far, everything is surveilled in London.
Yep.
So I'm gonna join the Masons. We're gonna have secret handshakes,
the whole thing, right?
I don't know what we're talking about.
All right. Anyway, hey, this has been recorded, so it's all good. Gang, thanks so much for joining us in the great discussion today. I hope we got your week off to a good start. A little, hopefully light, not too heavy, but there's good stuff there. As usual, we have a lot of TechStrong TV following the gang today, so stay tuned for that. Do check us out on our OTT channel, whether you're on Amazon or Roku or Apple TV or iOS, if you're running the new OS 26 or Android as well, or TechStrong TV on YouTube, wherever you watch us. We hope you enjoy it. Until tomorrow, this is Alan Schimmel. We're out.